They didn't arrive as slaves. They didn't begin in chains. Before America existed, before its borders, before its laws, black people ruled civilizations. This is not a forgotten story. This is a story that was erased. When Black American history is told, it almost always begins with slavery, chains, whips, pain. But that version of history begins far too late, because before ships crossed the Atlantic, before bodies were sold, before names were taken away, there was a people with history, identity, and power. To understand Black America today, we must go back, not to plantations, but to Africa. Africa was not one story. It was thousands of nations, each with its own language, its own laws, its own way of life. Some lived near rivers, some near deserts, some near the ocean. They traded with each other. They negotiated peace. They fought wars, just like every other civilization in human history. Africa was not behind the world. Africa was part of the world. Before the year 1619, Africa was not broken. It was not waiting to be saved. It was not waiting to be saved. Africa was powerful. Empires like Mali and Songhai controlled vast lands stretching across West Africa. They controlled trade routes that moved gold, salt, and knowledge across continents. The city of Timbuktu was not a myth. It was real, a center of education, a place of libraries, universities, and scholars. At a time when much of Europe struggled with literacy, African scholars were writing books on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and law. These books were not stories. They were textbooks, written by hand, copied carefully, preserved intentionally. Some explained how stars moved. Others described surgical techniques. Some discussed economics, trade, and ethics. Knowledge was not hidden. It was taught, and education was respected as power. African kings did not rule with chaos. They ruled with systems. Queens held political power. Elders governed communities. Laws were enforced. Culture was preserved. This was not a continent without history. This was a civilization with depth. The people of Africa were not statistics. They were human beings, farmers who understood the land, warriors trained to protect their people, teachers who passed wisdom to the next generation. Families gathered. Stories were told. Children were raised with purpose. Children learned by watching. They learned how to plant, how to build, how to speak with respect. Elders were not ignored. They were honored. History was not written only in books. It was spoken, passed from voice to voice, generation to generation. That is how identity survived. No child was born a slave. No mother ever dreamed of raising one. Slavery was not an identity. It was a condition forced onto human beings. And long before chains touched their skin, these people knew exactly who they were. But something dangerous was coming. To justify what was about to happen, a lie had to be created. A lie that said Africans were less than human. A lie repeated so often it began to sound like the truth. The lie was simple. If Africans were human, slavery was a crime. But if Africans were labeled as inferior, then slavery could be justified. So the lie was taught in churches, in schools, in laws, repeated until violence felt normal. Because before you steal a man's body, you must erase his identity. That lie traveled across oceans. It entered laws, religion, and education, and it shaped centuries of pain. Then one day ships appeared on the horizon. Ships that did not come with peace. Ships that did not come with mercy. Crowns were replaced by chains. Names were erased. And Black history entered its darkest chapter. The world would never be the same. Families would be torn apart. Languages would be silenced. Names would be replaced with numbers. And a journey would begin that still echoes today. In the next episode, we reveal the truth about the first ships, not the story you were told, but the story that was hidden. If you want to understand Black America, not as a statistic, not as a stereotype, but as a people with history, depth, and truth, subscribe now, because the next episode changes everything.